So, quick question for you. What makes something hard to play on guitar? In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about 4 pieces for the guitar that to the average person might sound incredibly difficult, if not almost impossible. But as guitar players, we might know that these pieces aren't actually that hard to play. Does that mean these pieces are easy and every guitar player ever can play them? No, not necessarily, but what it does mean is that once you learn these certain techniques, you should be able to play these pieces with some level of ease. These techniques might take time to develop and time to learn, but once you learn them, the pieces themselves aren't actually that bad, and I'm going to explain why in this video. So if you want to find out more about these pieces and what they are, stay tuned and let's get started. The first piece that I want to talk about is going to be the piece Spanish Romance, also known as Romanza by the great Anonymous. Now this piece is one that most people are somewhat familiar with, probably because it's been used in tons of TV shows and movies. But this piece, when it comes to playing it on the guitar, even though it sounds hard, it's not that bad. This piece, what makes it so easy is that for the right hand, the part that's doing probably most of the impressive work, is just doing the same exact thing over and over and over. The right hand technique when you play it is just taking the thumb and ring finger, playing them at the exact same time, and then having the index finger and the middle finger follow pretty soon after. Overall, it doesn't sound that hard, right? The technique when slowed down and looked up close would look something like this. As you see, really not that bad. Now what makes it sound nice though is the left hand is having a moving note in the high E string, creating this nice melody that is being supported by the accompaniment pattern that the other fingers are doing. The melody note is most times just single notes being played with even just possibly one finger. It does have some difficult parts where you have to do some bars and some kind of stretches in the left hand to make some more interesting chord shapes than most guitar players are used to making. But if you play guitar and you can play some chords, this piece isn't going to be impossible to play. The next piece on this list is one that sounds actually much tougher because it sounds really quick. This piece is one that many students learn in their freshman, maybe sophomore year of college when they're studying classical guitar at a university or a conservatory, and this piece would be Etude No. 1 by Hector Villalobos. This piece is one that is a great one that students learn, like I said, in college because they use it to develop their overall right hand arpeggio technique. This one uses the thumb, index, middle, and ring finger to play just like Romanza, but it does use it in a much more complicated pattern. But again, just like Romanza, what makes this piece really easy to do once you learn the technique you need is it's just the same thing over and over and over. This piece does deviate a little bit from the technique, somewhere around the middle section of the piece before it goes back to the beginning, where it does this fast scale run. That part is a bit tricky, so I'm not going to talk about that, but the technique that you need for the majority of this piece is just something that looks like this. So just like Romanzo, the arpeggio technique that you need doesn't look that bad on its own, and all you need to do is just speed it up over time, practice getting it slow first so that way you can build it up and you can get it faster and faster eventually, and then you just do the same thing over and over and over. Now also just like Romanzo, the thing that is going to change is going to be the left hand shape. You're going to be doing mostly chord shapes. The first chord shape that you do is just your everyday E minor chord that most guitar players know how to do. However, after that, later on, it does have some more interesting chord shapes with some tougher stretches as well as some bars. Overall, not crazy hard to do. It is a little bit tougher than the last song, Romanza, but again, once you learn this technique and you practice it slowly, you should be able to speed it up, speed it up, speed it up until it's sounding pretty impressive. The next piece on this list is pretty much a rite of passage for any classical guitarist. It's one that everybody wants to learn even before they even play classical guitar. It's one that people even think was made for the classical guitar, even when it was originally made for the piano. You probably know what piece I'm talking about right now if you're a classical guitarist, but if you're not, the piece I'm talking about would be Asturias by Isaac Albéniz. Now this piece does use a few different techniques, and again it is much faster. The techniques that we need to know about are going to be being able to play with the thumb, index, and middle finger, being able to play with the thumb, index, and ring finger, and also being able to do a rasgueado with all the fingers on the strings. Now for this piece, I'm talking specifically about the A section, the part of the piece that people seem to know and be more familiar with. Yes, I think the B section is a lot tougher than the A section. If you guys disagree, let me know in the comments. Anyway, the techniques that you need for the A section at first only look something like this. It's not that bad. Later on, it does get a little bit more difficult and has you take the same technique but do it across the strings and have you do it just overall a little bit more difficult. That would look something like this. Now, in my opinion, the hardest part of this section would be when you have to do a quick raschiato and then quickly hop your hand back over to going thumb, middle, index. This definitely would be the hardest part of the piece, so when you're practicing it, just take your time, go nice and slow, really be careful and keep track of how your hand is moving and save the time by having your hand move as little as possible. Find a position that you can make that change pretty easily, not one that's going to make you have to make that change far more difficult, and you should be good to go. The final piece on this list would be the piece Recuerdos de la Alhambra. And before you say anything, yes, I know this piece does use the tremolo technique, which is a technique that is pretty hard to do. But just like all the other pieces, once you learn this technique, you're good to go. In my opinion, what makes this piece hard, as well as other tremolo pieces, isn't only just the tremolo technique, it also has to do with the left hand. Many times tremolo pieces have a very difficult left hand part, which requires you to do chord shapes that most guitar players, if not all guitar players that haven't done tremolo, aren't really used to. Now, don't get me wrong, the tremolo technique itself is still pretty difficult. It's one that isn't going to be one you can just master in, I would say, a few weeks even. It's one that you want to take time, develop slowly, bit by bit, go slow, go fast, find creative ways to practice it, practice the tremolo in different rhythms, practice the tremolo with even using different finger combinations. All these things are going to help you have a smooth, even, and nice and clear tremolo. But once you get that, taking this technique and bringing it into a tremolo piece isn't that bad. Again, you just have to learn the left-hand fingerings in order to pull off the notes that the piece wants you to play. Why I put Recuerdos on this list instead of a piece like Un Sueño en la Floresta is because, in my opinion, Recuerdos, when it comes to the left-hand technique, isn't nearly as hard as some of the other tremolo pieces that I've seen, at least the popular ones. Anyway, that's all for this video. I wanted to make just a quick video talking about some pieces that people think are hard. In a way, I guess you could say debunking some of the classical guitar myths that these pieces are impossible to play and only the best of us can play them. Because with good practice and good technique, you can play these pieces as well if you don't play them already. Anyway, if you guys are new here, hopefully you liked what you saw and hopefully you will consider checking out other videos of mine, giving this video a like, and subscribing to the channel. Doing any of those things would be a big help to me because overall what it does is just helps the channel be able to reach more people and have more people start to see the world of classical guitar. Anyway, like I said, that's all for now, so I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.